In the heart of Lagos, Nigeria, where the skyline sparkled with towers and dreams, lived Adesewa Adeyemi, the only daughter of Chief Alade Adeyemi, a self-made billionaire and oil magnate. Adesewa had everything most girls could ever dream of: a fleet of luxury cars, designer clothes from Paris and Milan, private jets, and a palace-like mansion in Banana Island. Yet beneath the sparkle of her world was a lonely heart that beat for one thing her wealth couldn't buy: true love. At 28, Adesewa was of marriageable age by societal standards, and her father's constant reminders didn't help. A princess must find a prince, not just any man, he'd say at dinner, unaware that Adesewa had already tried many times. Every man who came into her life seemed enchanted by the shine of her father's money, not by the fire in her soul or the poetry in her laugh. Each date began with charm and sweet words, but ended with veiled questions about inheritance, properties, and her father's business connections. Her heart had begun to grow tired. Her first serious relationship had been with Tunde, a handsome, well-spoken lawyer from Abuja. They met at a business conference, and he immediately struck her as different. He quoted African literature, complimented her intelligence, and didn't even ask what car she drove. Adesewa felt seen for the first time, but 3 months into the relationship, Tunde began asking about her father's political ties and oil contracts. If I ever wanted to start my own firm, would Chief Adeyemi consider backing it? He asked one evening while running his fingers through her hair. Her smile froze. Her heart cracked. She ended things the next day. After Tunde came a parade of others. Chuka, the tech entrepreneur who pretended not to know who her father was, until she caught him secretly photographing her family's art collection. Idris, the British Nigerian architect, who whisked her to Zanzibar but accidentally forgot his wallet, expecting her to cover every luxury. Then there was Yomi, the gospel singer, whose idea of a first date was performing a love song he wrote, titled "Blessed by the Billionaire's Daughter." Each disappointment chipped away at her faith. Her friends, though well-meaning, couldn't understand. They often joked, "At least your heartbreaks are happening in designer shoes." But Adesewa didn't care about shoes. She just wanted someone who would love her, without knowing her father's net worth. Late one night, after another failed relationship, Adesewa sat by the edge of her infinity pool, staring into the calm water. Her heart felt like that still surface, deeply sad, hiding storms beneath. She wondered if she was cursed to be rich but unloved. Her mother, Chief Mrs. Morenike Adeyemi, found her there, a regal woman who wore gala like a crown. She sat beside her daughter in silence before speaking. "When I met your father, he was a struggling teacher. He didn't even have shoes," she said, smiling. "But I saw who he was inside. The world only sees the gold. You must find someone who sees your soul." The next morning, Adesewa called her best friend Kemi, a makeup artist who had known her since boarding school. "I'm tired of this life, Kemi. I want to meet someone who sees me, just me, not my last name," she said. Kemi listened, then whispered, "Then become someone else." The idea was born. Adesewa would disappear from the world of wealth and reappear as a humble, regular woman. She would dress differently, speak less of her background, and live in a modest part of town. If love could be found in the market streets instead of marble mansions, she was ready. With her parents' reluctant blessing, Adesewa packed her things. She rented a small room in Yaba, a buzzing, youthful area of Lagos where nobody knew her name. She wore plain ankara, tied her hair in scarves, and introduced herself as Sewa, a struggling seamstress trying to build her small business. Her luxurious accent faded into the local lilt. The mansion, the staff, the cars, they were all left behind. She rode Kiki to work. She bought roasted corn from the roadside. She sat in church pews where no one turned to stare. For the first time, she felt invisible and strangely peaceful. Adesewa's days in Yaba were filled with simplicity. She shared compound space with traders, barbers, and students. Each morning, she swept her veranda, fetched water, and sewed Ankara blouses for neighbors. At first, it was difficult. Mosquitoes at night, noise from the street, and no air conditioning. But with each passing day, she began to feel grounded. People treated her with kindness, but not awe. The woman who sold yam next door called her Sewa baby, and old Mama Bisi always gave her palm oil for free, calling her my daughter from another womb. For once, Adesewa felt like she belonged, not because of money, but because of presence. One hot Tuesday, while on her way to the tailor's market in Mushin, her tricycle broke down. Frustrated, she stepped out wondering what to do, until a young man with oil-stained jeans and a cheeky grin approached. "Madam, engine don't overheat. Make I help you?" he asked. That was the first time she met Kunle. He wasn't tall or flashy, but his confidence was effortless. He fixed the tricycle quickly and refused to take more than N500. "Na God dey bless, no be money," he said with a wink. Something about his honesty disarmed her. She thanked him and he simply nodded and walked off, whistling. A few days later, Adesewa spotted Kunle again, this time outside the corner suya spot. He greeted her with familiarity, like they had always known each other. "How's your stubborn keke?" he teased. She laughed. They ended up eating suya together on a plastic table, surrounded by flies and firelight. They talked about life, hers as a seamstress, his as a mechanic who once dreamed of becoming an engineer. School fees chased the dream away, he said, not bitterly, just honestly. He asked nothing about her past. He didn't try to impress. He only listened. For the first time in years, she didn't have to lie or pretend, because her truth was finally simple. Rain poured one night while Adesewa was returning from a delivery. She was drenched and shivering when Kunle spotted her and quickly ushered her into his workshop. He wrapped her in an old but clean towel and made her hot tea with peak milk. They sat quietly in the workshop, the smell of grease mixing with the scent of rain. She watched him patch up an old carburetor by lantern light, humming an old Ebenezer Obey tune. Her heart swelled. This wasn't the life she knew, but it felt warm, real. As she sipped the tea, she whispered to herself, This might be what I've been looking for." In the weeks that followed, Adesewa and Kunle grew closer. He would stop by her small kiosk with puff puff and zobo, and she, in turn, would bring him extra buttons or fabric scraps to clean his hands. Their friendship was natural, unforced. She laughed more with him than she had in years. Kunle never once asked where she lived or how she survived. He admired her hustle, the way she patched clothes so carefully and listened to customers with patience. "Sewa, your hand sweet. You fit so President's Agbada," he teased once. She smiled, knowing he had no idea she used to dine with governors. One evening, as they sat beneath a mango tree outside his workshop, Kunle grew quiet. "You know, say, since I meet you, my heart no day rest again," he said softly, looking at the ground. Adesewa's pulse quickened. She wanted to say something witty, but all she could manage was a smile. "Me too," she whispered. The words were small but mighty. In that moment, two hearts spoke without titles or designer gowns. Just truth. Kunle reached out and gently touched her hand. That touch lingered in her soul long after the night fell. Adesewa visited her best friend Kemi one weekend, sneaking out to Ikoyi, where Kemi now ran a growing beauty studio. As she described Kunle, his kindness, his hands, his dreams, Kemi grew concerned. "Sewa, have you thought this through? What happens when he finds out who you really are?" "I don't care," Adesewa replied, staring at her reflection in the mirror. "He loves me, not my last name, not Banana Island, me." But Kemi wasn't convinced. "Just don't let your truth become a betrayal," she said solemnly. Adesewa didn't answer. Deep down, a quiet fear began to stir. Back in Yaba, not everyone was pleased with the blossoming relationship. Bose, a neighboring food vendor who had long admired Kunle, began to notice how much time he spent with Sewa. She often threw shade when Adesewa walked past. One day, while Kunle was away, Bose approached her. "You think, say, because you fine and act humble, you go, just carry man way others they eye." Her words were sharp. Adesewa remained calm but shaken. It was a reminder that even in her disguise, she wasn't invisible to jealousy or scrutiny. Kunle surprised her one evening with a birthday gift. It was a simple necklace, handmade with cowrie shells and beads. "I know, say I know get gold or diamonds, but I see this and think of you," he said nervously. Adesewa held the necklace like it was the crown jewels. "It's perfect," she whispered. It wasn't about the price, it was the meaning. No one had ever given her something so sincere, so from the heart. That night, as she wore the necklace and lay on her thin mattress, her heart swelled with something deeper than affection. She was falling in love, truly. As their bond deepened, Kunle began to share his dreams. "One day, I go open my own auto garage. Big one, with real branding, apprentices, everything clean and professional," he said with hope in his eyes. Adesewa admired his vision. He didn't want handouts, only opportunity. But her heart ached. She had the resources to make his dream come true 10 times over, yet she couldn't offer it, not without revealing her true identity. She wanted to help, but without breaking the fragile trust they'd built. It was a dilemma that kept her up at night. One Sunday, after church service, Kunle and Adesewa took a walk along the lagoon. He stopped abruptly and looked into her eyes. "If I tell you, say I dey think of making you my wife, you go fear." Her breath caught. No one had ever asked her that question without talking about her father's name or the wedding headline in City People. She searched his face. There was no calculation, only hope. "I won't fear," she replied. "But love is a big step." Kunle nodded. "I know they rush, but my heart don't already choose you." And with that, she knew things were getting real. Back in Banana Island, Chief Alade Adeyemi began to grow restless. He missed his daughter and disliked the idea of her pretending to be poor. "What if something happens to her?" he asked his wife during dinner. "She's finding her path," Morenika replied calmly. "Let her finish her journey. Our daughter was born with everything except peace." Still, the chief instructed his trusted driver Bala, to check on her from a distance. He made sure no one interfered, but he needed to know the man who had caught her heart. Trouble came when an old friend from Adesewa's previous life, Fola, an ex who worked in finance, spotted her buying tomatoes in the Yaba market. At first, he thought it was someone who looked like her, but when he saw her closely, his jaw dropped. "Sewa, is this some kind of joke?" he asked, half laughing, half confused. Adesewa pulled him aside and begged him not to say a word. "Please, Fola, I'm not who I used to be, not right now." Fola shook his head. "You? In this place? You're playing a dangerous game." She walked away without explaining further, heart pounding. She knew secrets had a short shelf life. One fateful afternoon, Kunle was fixing a faulty generator when he spotted a strange man watching from across the road. It was Bala, the chief's driver. Bala quickly pretended to be interested in buying parts, but Kunle noticed his attention wasn't on the machines. It was on Sewa. Later that night, Kunle confronted her. "You dey hide something. That man, he dey look you like person we know your full story." Adesewa froze. The moment she feared was near. Her two worlds were beginning to collide. She knew she couldn't hide forever, but was the truth going to cost her the one thing she finally found? Love. After Kunle's confrontation, the silence between them grew louder than any argument could have. Adesewa didn't deny what he saw. She simply said, "I'm not ready to explain. Not yet." That night, she didn't sleep. The weight of her deception pressed against her chest. She wanted to tell him everything, but she was terrified. What if he walked away? What if he felt betrayed, like all the others she had run from? For once, her heart was full, but her truth was a ticking time bomb. One evening it rained heavily, thunder cracking through the Yaba sky. Adesewa stood by Kunle's workshop, soaked but determined. "I need to talk," she said. He didn't speak, just opened the door and let her in. "I lied," she began. "My name is Adesewa Adeyemi. My father is Chief Alade Adeyemi. I'm not poor. I've never been poor. I came here to escape men who only wanted my wealth, not me." Her voice trembled, but her eyes held his. "You were the first person who saw me." "Just me." Kunle stared at her, stunned. He leaned against his work table, arms crossed, face unreadable. "Why didn't you trust me with the truth?" he asked softly. She didn't have an answer that could fix the pain behind that question. Kunle didn't say much after her confession. He left the room quietly, walking into the rain. Adesewa sat alone, heart pounding in the quiet aftermath. The next day, Kunle avoided her. He didn't call, didn't stop by. She watched from her window as he worked silently at the garage. He smiled at others, but his eyes didn't shine. Adesewa's heart shattered piece by piece. She had found the man she prayed for, but lost him by pretending to be someone else. Days passed. Kunle finally came to her doorstep. His eyes were serious, his voice steady. "I needed time," he began. "You lied to me, and it hurt. But I understand why you did it." He sat beside her. "You didn't trust me with your truth because the world hasn't given you many reasons to trust. I see that now. I was angry, but not because you're rich. I was angry because I loved you, and I felt like I didn't know who I loved anymore." Adesewa wiped her tears. "You still love me?" she asked. He nodded. "I love you. Not the story, not the money, just you. And with that, they held each other, no longer separated by secrets. The days that followed were like morning after a storm, gentle, warm, and full of healing. Kunle and Adesewa talked more openly than ever before. She showed him pictures of her childhood, told him about her fears and expectations. He showed her his sketches of his dream garage, the business plan he wrote at 19. Adesewa offered to help fund his garage, but Kunle refused. "Let me build something on my own first. Then you can support, not save me." She nodded with pride. It wasn't about power. It was about respect. Together, they began to build not just love, but a future on truth. The time had come for Kunle to meet the man behind the legacy, Chief Alade Adeyemi. Adesewa arranged a private dinner at their Banana Island home. Kunle wore a clean native outfit with carefully ironed seams, his palms sweaty but his eyes steady. Chief Adeyemi studied him in silence over egusi soup and pounded yam. Kunle didn't boast, he didn't flatter. He simply said, "Sir, I love your daughter, not for what she owns, but for who she is, and I'll spend my life proving it." The chief said little, but his silence carried weight. Chief Adeyemi wasn't an easy man to impress. A week after the dinner, he invited Kunle to his oil company under the guise of offering a job. "Let's see what you're made of," he said. Kunle refused the executive position. "I don't want shortcuts, sir. I want to grow my own name the way you did." This impressed the chief far more than any resume. Later that night, he told Morenike, "The boy has pride, not the arrogant kind, but the kind that builds legacy. Maybe he is the one." Adesewa and Kunle attended a gala together, their first public appearance since her return. The Lagos elite whispered, surprised to see the billionaire's daughter with a mechanic. Headlines the next morning read, "Adesewa's unlikely prince." Some mocked, others were curious, but the story captured hearts. Social media exploded with comments praising her for choosing love over luxury. For the first time, her story inspired rather than shocked. And Kunle, he stayed grounded. "Let them talk," he said. "You and me, we know the truth." With a small loan from Adesewa, not as a gift, but a business partnership, Kunle opened his dream garage, Kunle Tech Autoworks. Clean floors, digital diagnostics, uniforms for staff, and a training program for young boys in the community. Adesewa beamed at the opening ceremony. "You didn't just fix engines," she whispered to him. "You fixed my heart." Kunle squeezed her hand. "And you gave me courage to dream again." Together, they cut the ribbon. The applause wasn't just for the garage, it was for love that defied odds. One evening, Kunle took Adesewa to the same suya spot where they had their first long talk. Under the same dim bulbs and street sounds, he knelt with a simple gold ring. No lies, no masks, just me. "Marry me?" Tears fell down her cheeks as she nodded. "Yes." 1,000 times, yes. Around them, bystanders cheered. Someone played a Yoruba praise song from a Bluetooth speaker. It was raw. It was beautiful. It was real. Adesewa didn't need a diamond-studded proposal. She had found something far rarer, honest love. Though the world expected a grand society wedding dripping in diamonds and held in Dubai, Adesewa wanted something different. "Let's do it here, in Yaba," she insisted. Let the people who saw us grow, who saw us love, celebrate with us. Kunle agreed. The wedding would blend both worlds. A small church in Yaba for the vows, and a garden reception hosted by the Adeyemis in Ikoyi. The buzz around Lagos was loud. The story had become legend. How the billionaire's daughter found love on the dusty streets. As the wedding drew closer, Bose, the jealous neighbor from months ago, quietly approached Adesewa one evening. Her tone was softer now. "I misjudged you," she said. "I thought you came to take what wasn't yours." Adesewa smiled. "No hard feelings, Bose. Life has a funny way of teaching us all." She gave Bose one of her Ankara gowns for free. "For the wedding," she added. Bose nodded, eyes misty. It was a moment of reconciliation and proof that love leaves peace in its wake. Adesewa packed her things slowly. Her rented room, the plastic drawers, the old mirror. She had lived a whole other lifetime in this humble space. Kemi helped her move, hugging her tightly before they left. "You found what we all pray for, Sewa. You became who you needed to be to receive it." As they drove away, she looked out at the dusty road, the children playing football, the Akara woman calling out her last batch. It wasn't just a place, it was a rebirth ground, and she would carry its lessons forever. The wedding was everything they hoped for. In the little Yaba church, Adesewa wore a simple lace gown sewn by one of her apprentices. Kunle wore white agbada with gold embroidery. Their vows echoed with sincerity, their eyes full of tears. At the reception in Ikoyi, Chief Adeyemi raised his glass. "My daughter found what I couldn't buy her, a man who would love her with or without her name. And that, my friends, is the true price of her heart." The crowd applauded. Even the rich and powerful wiped their eyes. It was a love that humbled pride. Married life started in a modest bungalow Kunle built from scratch. No maids, no drivers, just love, laughter, and 2 toothbrushes by the sink. Adesewa continued her tailoring, now running a foundation that trained young women in fashion design. Kunle's garage expanded into 2 more branches. They didn't need to prove anything to anyone. They were each other's home. When they lay in bed at night, they often talked about how it all started, with a broken tricycle suya and a rainstorm. "God didn't just write our story," Kunle would say. "He edited it until it was perfect." As Kunle's business expanded, invitations began flooding in, from high-ranking officials to elite business circles. Everyone now wanted a piece of the man who won the billionaire's daughter. Journalists hounded them, wanting exclusive interviews. At first, Kunle tried to stay grounded, but Adesewa noticed the strain. "I didn't marry you to be a celebrity," she joked, brushing his collar before another TV interview. He smiled, but beneath it, she could see the exhaustion. Fame had never been their goal. Love had been. A powerful politician offered Kunle a large contract that could make him a multimillionaire overnight, on one condition: he'd have to give a bribe. It was everything he had ever dreamed of: wealth, prestige, a national footprint. But Kunle declined. "If I take it, I become just like those who laughed at me before," he told Adesewa. She hugged him tightly, pride glowing in her eyes. "You just became richer than all of them combined," she whispered. They didn't need dirty money to build clean dreams. One of Kunle's garages was set on fire by a jealous competitor. No lives were lost, but the damage was massive. Adesewa rushed to the scene with him, her wrapper stained with ash. tears in her eyes. "Why are people so wicked?" she asked, trembling. Kunle held her. "Because they don't understand the value of patience. But we will rebuild, not for the world, but for ourselves." His strength became her anchor, and her love became his shelter. Together they stood in the rubble like royalty with no crown, just faith. Adesewa's fashion foundation had grown rapidly. Young women from slums and remote towns wrote letters of gratitude. One, named Tenny, even became a rising fashion star and credited Sewa for changing her life. "I found my voice through her thread and needle," she told the press. Watching her protégés walk the runway in Abuja, Adesewa leaned into Kunle's shoulder. "They call me a mentor, but really, I was just a girl looking for love, and found purpose too." Kunle kissed her hand. "And you stitched together futures." One quiet evening, Kunle and Adesewa stood on the balcony of their home, watching the sunset over Lagos. The city buzzed below, but above it, they found stillness. He turned to her and said, "If you hadn't lied to me that day, I would never have found you. And yet, your truth saved me." She smiled. "God used my disguise to reveal what was real." They held hands and said a prayer, not for more wealth, not for fame, but for continued peace, honesty, and love. That night, they didn't just feel lucky, they felt chosen. One morning, Adesewa fainted while teaching at the fashion center. She was rushed to the hospital, where tests revealed an early-stage heart condition, stress-induced and manageable but serious. Kunle was devastated. "How could I not notice?" he asked, sitting by her bedside. She touched his cheek. "Because I was too busy smiling through the pain." For weeks, he became her full-time nurse, cooking, bathing her, whispering encouragement. "I'll give you half my heart if yours won't work," he joked. It was in sickness, more than in health, that their vows truly came alive. Years passed, and while love bloomed, children did not. They visited specialists, prayed, fasted. Every month brought hope and disappointment. Rumors started to swirl in the media. Some said Kunle must take a second wife. Others whispered of spiritual punishment, but Kunle silenced them all. "Our home is full, even without babies," he told a friend. And Adesewa? She began writing children's books instead, stories about love, courage, and self-worth. They mothered dreams, mentored youths, and built legacy beyond bloodlines. One day, Adesewa received a handwritten letter. It was from Tunde, the first man who broke her heart. "I saw your story on TV. I now realize what I lost chasing status. You were always enough," it read. She read it aloud to Kunle. He chuckled. "Imagine if you married him, you'd be crying in a gold cage." She nodded. "Instead, I'm dancing in a house we built with dust and dreams." They burned the letter together and laughed. The past no longer held power. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Kunle recreated the suya spot from their early days in their backyard. He wore oil-stained jeans for the first time in years and served her with a plastic plate and a cheeky grin. "You brought me from silence to music," she said. "And you brought me from mechanics to miracles," he replied. They danced barefoot under the moonlight, neighbors peeking over the fence, smiling at the love that still glowed like fireflies. They had no throne, no crown, but they ruled each other's hearts. Inspired by their journey, Adesewa and Kunle began a new tradition: funding weddings for low-income couples who had genuine love but no means. The first wedding was held in their garage-turned-event space. 10 couples, one mass celebration, and tears everywhere. "We found love in unexpected places," Kunle told the crowd. "Now we want others to do the same." The brides wore gowns stitched at Sewa's center. The grooms wore suits tailored by Kunle's friend from the market. It wasn't just charity. It was legacy. It was love multiplied. Adesewa received a surprise call from an international women's leadership foundation based in Geneva. They had heard of her fashion school and her community weddings. "We'd like to fly you here to share your story," the woman said. At first, she hesitated. She didn't feel like a leader, just a woman who once wanted to be loved. But Kunle held her hand. "Go. Show them what the heart of Africa looks like." She went, and her speech brought a standing ovation. She didn't talk about her family's wealth, only about the journey from hiding to healing. On a quiet Harmattan morning, while sweeping the yard, Adesewa found a toddler hiding behind her gate, hungry, abandoned, and silent. She and Kunle took the child in without hesitation. They named him Ifedayo. Love has become joy. What started as temporary foster care became permanent. They adopted Ifedayo legally, and he grew up watching his mother stitch dreams and his father fix broken things, not just machines, but people too. They didn't just gain a son, they earned one. Years later, the couple was invited to a charity gala at the very mansion Adesewa once fled. The halls were still filled with chandeliers and whispers, but this time she walked in with her head high, her husband beside her, and Ifedayo holding her hand. Some still stared, others bowed in respect. But Adesewa no longer needed approval. She had found what the halls of Banana Island couldn't offer: peace in simplicity, truth in humility, and love in its purest form. When Chief Alade Adeyemi passed away peacefully at 78, he left a letter for Adesewa. "You taught me something I never taught you, that riches cannot measure the depth of a soul. You married a man of integrity, and in doing so you became richer than my entire estate. I am proud." Adesewa wept, not from sorrow, but gratitude. Her father had finally understood the price of her heart, and he honored it. In her workshop, surrounded by apprentices, Adesewa stitched one final gown by hand, a tradition she did once a year. As she passed the gown to a young bride-to-be, she smiled. This was stitched with the same hands that once searched for love in silence. That night, Kunle lit candles in the backyard. "Let's dance," he said. No music, just memories. They moved slowly, the moon watching from above. Ifedayo peeked from the window, smiling. They had walked through lies, pain, poverty, wealth, heartbreak, and healing. And in the end, they didn't just find love. They became love.